So welcome everybody to my talk. Today I'm going to show you briefly what a technical artist does. But first things first, let me introduce myself. My name is Tomasz, I'm 26, and I began my journey with game development with first Morrowind mods in 2008. And for those who played Morrowind and were into modding, maybe you stumbled on one of my creations. They were mainly swords and other different mods. And I'll talk about it a little bit later because I think it's important. But anyway, I studied architecture, but I chosen to work in game development as a graphic artist, 3D artist. And so in 2016, I started to work in my first real game dev job in Megapixel, formerly known as Madman. It was a small studio, but I gained a lot of experience there. I worked with some great graphic artists down. And for last almost 2 years, I work as technical artist in 10 Square Games on a product called Fishing Clash. It's a mobile game. Maybe you've heard about it. If not, I'll talk about it later too. And before I start my presentation, I wanted to talk about this Morrowind modding episode and why it was important. There was this tool called Tomorrowland Construction Set, and I think it was very important to get into this because it gave me a brief look into how game engines work, how different objects and different classes of objects are connected with each other, how the word inspector works, and how what are different kinds of objects. And it was a nice peek into what's behind the curtain. So yeah, and as we are on the topic of Elder Scrolls, let's start this presentation by dissecting this screenshot from our favorite Elder Scrolls game, Skyrim. So yeah, when you look, when you're in the game, you rarely think about what assets it consists of. But everything you see, some graphics had to make. And let's see what are those elements. So 70-80% of what you can see are static objects. These are made by environment artists. And these are the things that are building blocks of the worlds, like the architecture, the bridge that we stand on, the city gate and city walls, but also the smaller objects like the torches or the fireplaces and the signs hanging. So yeah, these are all static objects made by environment art department. Next thing are characters, and characters are all the NPCs as you can see here on the screenshot, but not only. There are also creatures in the world game, and there are also dragons in Skyrim, for example. So all of that are characters, and they are done by character artists and animators, of course, so they can live and breathe. Next thing would be UI, so user interface. So in this screenshot, it is the compass in the upper section and the crosshair in the middle, and the name of the city that we are in, which is Whiterun. But also things like health bars, journal, the menu, all of this is done by 2D artists such as UI artists and the UX, so user experience. And that's briefly it, but there's more. So things like foliage, for example, so all the flora you can see in the picture. These are made also by environment artists, but sometimes there will be special departments for just the foliage. So foliage artists are specializing in this. These are not so easy to do as the normal 3D models because they need to have some shaders and transparency and some different lighting. So yeah. Then we have terrain. So it's all the hills and mountains you see in Skyrim, but as well as the paths in the city in this screenshot. So these are made with custom tools in the engine, terrain tools, I assume, that are made by level art department. So as well, another different group of people that are working on game graphics. Next is Sky. So Sky is obviously not the real Sky simulated, but rather it's a dome that has some clever shaders and textures that react to different time of day and different weather and so on. And again, I assume there was some people that worked only on Sky for Skyrim because it was a very dynamic asset in this game. Lighting. Of course, we couldn't see any of it without the lighting. It is super important thing in game. It is super hard task because you have to light the scenes so they look good in daylight and in the night in different kinds of weather, and it all has to be optimal. So again, another department of guys or people doing only lighting. Then we have VFX, so all these etheric things that can't be really modeled, like smoke, fire, rain, but also magic, spells, and so on. Again, another department of people that are only doing VFX for this game. And even things like fog. The things like we never think of when we play games, someone had to do them, and not to mention sounds and different things, but we're focusing only on graphics today. So there are all these different departments of people, and it gets even crazier. In the game Horizon Zero Dawn, as you may know, the protagonists have this beautiful lush hair that is the main focus of this character, I would say. And believe it or not, in this game, there was a group of people that were hair department, and there were 8 people, I don't know really how much, but they had to model the hair, so every strand, and style it, then do the proper shading and do the physics as well, because the hair reacts to all the movements of the character as well. And so you have all these special departments, special artists that do different kinds of stuff. And where is the place for someone else, like technical artists? What technical artists would do? And the answer is space for technical artists is somewhere in between those departments. So technical artists should understand most or all of those tasks on some level, so he can design and improve the workflow, keeping the departments in sync, and to manage their time so they're not wasting their time, so working with pipelines and stuff like this. So as the word itself says, it's workflow, so you have to make the work flow. And if there's a need for any department to use custom tools, like for example, the level art department use a terrain tool to model the hills and the mountains and etc., or the sky dome for the sky assets. Again, those are custom tools or custom things that technical artists would do. Even things like exporters and importers or live links between programs like Blender or 3ds Max and the game engine, so we can, without importing, exporting, but live checking how the assets look as we create them. These are things that the technical artists write, or if they exist, he implements them in the pipeline. And last but not least, of course, above all, optimization. So the game has to run smooth 60 FPS on consoles and on PCs, of course. So optimization is super important, and it consists of things like technical skills like counting draw calls, looking into geometry complexity, making level of detail models, or maybe not making, but making a system of LODs, batching the models, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And this all works in team of 50 people or 100 people, or even so. I don't know how many people worked on Skyrim, how many graphics, but I assume it was around 50, 100 people. But what if we have a team, a graphics team that consists of 10 people, or even less, like 6 people, for example. And through this, in a small team, everyone learns to be super versatile and do more than one thing. And technical artists must do those things as well. So all those things that are not standard, as you said, the terrain, the VFX, the lighting, etc., shaders. These are things that technical artists will do in a small team. And to show you how I became a technical artist without consciously choosing to be one, just by working as a graphic artist in a small team. I'll go quickly through this. So I started in Madman, or today Megapixel, by working as an environment artist. And I was doing pretty much simple geometry for the levels, and I was making those modular pieces to then make corridors. And I thought it was pretty much interesting, so I designed those elements so they work in any case. But yeah, that was it. Then we had to make textures for those models, and we could, of course, get some textures from internet, but we wanted to make our own textures, so we decided to use Substance Designer, and nobody pretty much knew Substance Designer or mastered maybe Substance Designer. So I was like, I know node-based systems from Blender, so maybe I should try this thing, and it wasn't so different from Blender. So yeah, it was simple math nodes and maybe some Photoshop blending layers and stuff like this, effects. And yeah, after a couple of months, I was a Substance Designer guy who made textures. So that was it. Then we had to implement those textures and into materials and custom materials in our engine, and even blend some materials in the shader based on vertex paint or whatever. And so again, shader editor in Unreal Engine is node-based. So I was like, I like nodes. I'll try to do that. Yeah, and I've done this shader, then I've done other shader. I've made next shaders. Then I started to read shader documentation in my free time. And after another couple of months, I was a shader guy. Then it came to the VFX. And what are VFX other than simple geometry and some custom shaders, and maybe some curves that control the timing of all the elements? So I was like, well, I know how to model things. I know shaders. So I'll try to do VFX. And yeah, I learned Unity VFX and Unreal VFX because they're very similar tools. They're really something between doing animation and doing shaders. So that was really intuitive to work with, and I had really much fun. Maybe it doesn't look like much fun, all those parameters and gray tables, but it's more fun than it looks like. And so yeah, after another months, I became a VFX guy. And once I was sitting with my friend who was a character artist, and he was modeling a character that had a dress with some tears in it. So, and he was texturing that character in Substance Painter, and he said that it would be awesome to have the brush that you can just paint, and the tears are just being made procedurally. And I was like, I know Substance Designer. I had a brief idea how to make that in Substance Designer. I know Substance Painter too, so maybe I could do some brush or smart material that can do all of this. And so yeah, I spent like 2 or 3 days with that, and it worked. It maybe wasn't something special. It was my first brush in Substance Painter, but yeah, it worked. And so I was, again, another thing I was doing, it was making tools for graphic art. So yeah, at this point I was doing almost none of environment arts work. I was doing the substance things. I was doing shaders. I was doing VFX. I was the painter tools guy, and I think you can see where this goes. That I was the guy to do this special task force in graphics team, and acquiring all these skills encouraged me to search a job that is that uses those skills. And I learned about technical art department, and this is a job for me. This is perfect. And apparently no one wants to do it, so it's even better. And I knew that there was a need in 10 Sport Games for a technical artist in Fishing Clash, but I was like, I'm doing this almost AAA things, and now I will go to do mobile things, and mobile, it's simple graphics, whatever. And guess I couldn't be more wrong, because the chase after new features of Unreal Engine or even other programs and learning new things to do did not leave me time for getting the deeper knowledge, the basic knowledge about how graphic card processors work, or how the graphic is working underneath the pretty stuff, so the code things and things like that. And the mobile industry is the perfect opportunity to learn those things, because instead of chasing new features in graphics, you chase every pixel and megabyte and FPS. You have to maintain this performance across a wide spectrum of mobile devices. And this pushed me to seek the knowledge of low-level knowledge about the 3D graphics. So this was cool. And beside that, technical artists team work in mobile is fun, because mobile games are pretty much almost always released products that are being maintained, and that means frequent updates, that means a lot of changes, that means new features. So there is a lot of room to improve workflow, to change things, and getting new ideas to work. So yeah, and I really enjoyed the time of streamlining the workflow by writing custom tools even. And so I, in the 2 years, I'm sorry, almost 2 years of working as technical artist in Fishing Clash, I learned basics of coding even. So that was great. So I started to develop myself in more horizontally rather than vertically. So it was nice to see that I grow this basic knowledge. So yeah, as we dissected the screens from Skyrim, let's see what's different in mobile games. And of course, graphics are simpler because the devices are less powerful, but that doesn't mean the work is different or more boring or something, because you have static objects like the foreground boat or the background islands and rocks. You have characters. Fish are characters in our game, and they're animated, and they're lovely assets made by our graphics team. And you have UI, and this is way more complicated UI than in any triple game like Skyrim. So yeah, And then you have those special items that need some tricks, like sky, water, and waves. And these are things that we want to do them, make them look realistic or even better than realistic, but we don't have that processing power of consoles or PCs. So what is super cool about working in mobile is that you have to use tricks. And the tricks are, for example, making the sky a simple plane that projects the perspective, that fakes the perspective, and the clouds are just a panning texture with some warping applied. And if you make water, you don't make it a transparent thing, but you make it so the reflections are baked, and the fish that are swimming in the water are not under the water because there's no transparency, so we wouldn't see them, but rather they are above the water, and they have the special shader on them applied, so they look like they're underwater. So yeah, between those tricks, we have a little bit of time to make some proper Easter eggs, like this cloud that is shaped like a shark. You can see that in the screenshot, the GIF on the left. And we can pretty much, imagination is our ceiling. We can do a lot more complex stuff. So the water that has very much geometry-based waves, and the waves are crashing on the rocks, and the water is flowing on those rocks, and it looks pretty much real. So yeah, and occasionally we have some opportunity to make some crazy assets, like the beautiful volcanic sharks, which I had a pleasure to make the shader for with this glowing shader stuff. And so yeah, to sum things up, technical artists makes graphic lives easy by shifting their focus from mundane and boring stuff like importing, exporting assets, so streamlining those things, and they so the graphics team have more time for making assets beautiful. And also graphic artists is a support artist, I would say, in the small team. And you have to remember that this is a job for curious people. So those who like to get to know how things work, who crave this knowledge to get behind the curtain and see how it's made and how we can make it better. And it's a really fun job. It never gets boring, and the new challenges, as I said, on working on a living product, make it so you pretty much never do the same task twice, but make those special tasks as you go. And thank you for this talk. And now we have less than 2 minutes to answer your questions, and I try. I guess those limitations to every count pixel is also true on consoles. Yes, of course. These are pretty much on every platform. So, but the mobile industry is different. That you have a wide spectrum of devices, and you have to get it to work on the high-end mobile as well as on the low-end cheap mobile phone. And in that point, you have to really think through how it's gonna be optimized to work on both of these and to look great on both of these. So yeah, you can hear banjo, great. I don't know if I think there's no other questions. So thank you very much for coming, and have a nice weekend. Bye, guys.